Can't see anyone yet, so maybe did everyone need to turn off the camera and the sound? Is that it? Hi, Max.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to take a few minutes to let everybody trickle in, and then we'll get started.
And you're free to turn on your camera as well. Of course, you can also turn it off. But yeah, it may be nice to see each other.
Yeah, we're going to live stream the event, and it's going to be recorded. So if you don't want your picture to be online, turn off your cameras. Yeah.
Also totally fine. I'm curious where everybody's from. It's always nice to know if we're international. We're doing it every time, but every time it's interesting to see where the people are joining from.
Yeah, so maybe you just want to post in your home country in the chat. There's a chat on the right side. Then we have an impression of where the people are from. I think Max is in Dresden. Ah, no, he's in Berlin again. The US.
Yeah,
Unless you made it. Ah, perfect.
Yeah, hi.
Nice. It's one of the few advantages from the Corona time, right? That we're getting more connected all over the globe, over the internet.
Yeah, true.
Romania.
Hey.
Nice.
Cool, and I see another Romanian. Camelia is also there.
Yeah, I'm a psychologist. I have background in working with autism, and psychedelics is my passion, and neuropsychology as a hobby. So I'm in a public event, but I'm gonna hear you all, and
it's very loud in your background. Yeah.
We'll get to the introduction later.
I'm gonna hear you and just participate silently.
Sure.
Perfect. Welcome. Nice of you to be here.
Thank you.
Cool. So I guess we can start. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing coming in.
I mean, we're going to do introductions anyway at the beginning, so it's going to take a while till we get to the actual topic. So I think people might have enough time to tune in and get the most out of it. Okay. Okay, then. Well, welcome, everybody. So cool of you to be here. Welcome to our online discussion event. Today, we're talking about psychedelics and capitalism. But we're going to start first with a few introductions to talk about who we are and what we're doing here and why we're doing it. My name is Lukas. I'm a PhD student at the University of Dresden. I study substance abuse and trauma in adolescence, and I've been working as a volunteer for the Mind Foundation since 2017 in the science department, and been doing these online discussion events with Patrick and Andy for the past couple of months. So at least in your introductions to you guys, maybe Andy, you start off just saying who you are.
Thanks. Yeah. So my name is Andy. I'm a scientific employee at the Mind Foundation. I started an internship there after finishing my master's in clinical neuropsychology. I also did an internship in a closed ward for psychotic patients. And yeah, I stayed on with Mind, and like Lukas said, we've been doing this online discussion platform for the past few months, and it's been nice to get all the perspectives from the community as well as to the potential of these new types of therapy.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Wentorp. I'm also with the Mind Foundation and kind of working in the gap between the Mind Foundation and the Mind Members Association. This is an event that is hosted with the Mind Members Association, so it's a community building event, and we seek to improve our connection to our members, build a community, and also engage in discussions with our membership, which I'm very happy about and look forward to the discussion as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys. So if anybody doesn't know about the Mind Foundation, I'm going to shortly introduce us. So the Mind Foundation is an organization that's working to establish safe and legal context for psychedelic experiences. And as Patrick mentioned, this event is part of the Mind, organized by the Mind Members Association. This event is free. That's one of the major draws to it, right? And we do this to, as Patrick mentioned, to build our community and to engage with the community, because we believe, as for the members of the Mind Foundation and everyone who's interested in becoming a member, this is a great way of getting to know other members and also some of our ideas and how we work. Yeah, so that's basically an introduction of who we are. What are we going to do tonight? So tonight, like the title says, it's an online discussion, so we want to discuss a bit, which means that also you guys will be discussing amongst yourselves. We'll start off with two kind of opposing starting viewpoints. So Andy and Patrick will both argue for one of the positions, so you can get some sense of some arguments to be made in this topic. And then afterwards, you get time to ask a few short questions just to clarify things you didn't understand. And afterwards, we're going to do breakout rooms, which means all of you are going to basically leave this chat room and going to be separated into smaller chat rooms with probably around 3 to 4 people. And then you can discuss amongst yourselves. So we'll give you kind of a discussion question that you can then talk through with the other members of your chat. These breakout rooms will not be live streamed, so our big room will be still stay in the live stream, and the breakout sessions will be kind of separate and private. And you're going to do that for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And afterward, you can all come back into the big room with everybody here and share kind of the discussion you had, the process you went through, kind of the points everybody made in your group. And what we're going to do is basically ask you as a group to appoint one person to share the process you had. So we can hear from all the groups what you did, what you talked about. And then following that, we have time to discuss amongst ourselves a bit and see where this leads us, right? We're kind of aiming to take around 90 minutes, so we should be finished around 9, I think. Yeah, I think that's kind of the process. Patrick, I just saw the poll. Do we want to do the poll before your arguments? Right, yeah?
Yeah, that's the temperature.
Yeah, maybe Sergio, when you're there, can you do the poll? Otherwise, we may be doing this at the end.
Okay, I can see the poll. Can any of you guys see the poll as well? So there's a poll.
Yeah, but the poll is kind of simplistic. I have a BA in political science, and I see that the capitalist system should be changed, but it's a very broad question, and
Oscar?
I think we can talk about.
Oscar, can I interrupt you for a second? We're going to do like bigger discussions afterwards, right? We're going to stay very quickly, and we're going to have the bigger discussions afterwards. We're going to have time to have the breakout rooms. Sorry. After the beginning, and then there's time for bigger discussions. So this is just very basic, like you said, very basic, simple questions. Just answer the questions that you see in front of you, and then we have the discussions, and we can see what kind of happens, right? Cool. So everybody, if you see the poll, there should be 2 questions. The first one, should psychedelics be integrated into a capitalistic system? Yes or no? And should the capitalistic system be changed? Yes or no? And you can choose one option and press submit. And then you should see the results in a bit. Okay, so everybody have time, you can answer the poll. Okay, so all of you should see the results by now. As you can see, the majority thinks that psychedelics should be integrated into the capitalistic system, and basically everybody says the capitalistic system should be changed. Yeah, we can discuss about the details in a bit afterwards. I think that's a great starting off point to go into our discussion points. So as it said in the poll, the big question is, should psychedelics be integrated or integrated into a capitalistic system? I'm going to start off with Patrick, who's going to argue that they shouldn't be, right? As the majority of you also said. And then afterwards, Andy is going to present the opposing viewpoint. Okay? Patrick, you ready to start us off?
Yes, I am indeed. Thank you, Lucas.
Cool. Take it away.
And yeah, as you said, I'm going to argue for the standpoint that psychedelics should not be integrated into this capitalistic system. But before I want to argue for this, I want to take a step back and kind of make you aware that there's, of course, hidden premises, and we kind of touched onto this with the two poll questions. And the hidden premise is kind of either A, that the capitalistic system needs to be changed, or B, that the capitalistic system does not need to be changed. And whether you take the A or B standpoint, you may also argue in certain ways when it comes to the question, should psychedelics be integrated into the system, right? Because maybe you can give reasons for psychedelics should be integrated into the system because we need to change the system, or the system should remain the same. It should remain the same. And this is kind of the teaser for my line of argumentation. But anyway, so I'm going to argue that mainly psychedelics should not be integrated into the system because it will have and it will kind of lead to more negative outcome that we already see because of the system is actually flawed. So my first argument is that the system needs to be changed first. Otherwise, we could not benefit to the large or a large extent from the psychedelic experience. So the potential is not realized. Why is that? I think that people within the capitalistic system still have a variety of false beliefs and kind of, not really functional premises. For example, if I want to win, someone else has to lose, or there's not enough.
Patrick, I've got a question for you, actually.
Excuse me?
I've got a question. How about we have National Socialism reintroduced?
So the schedule is that I'm laying down my line of argumentation first, and then we can discuss. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll talk later.
That sounds really good.
So exactly. So the hidden premises or false beliefs that people might have in the capitalistic system is something like it's always about me. We need to go higher, faster, better, right? You could either argue for that psychedelics can or should be integrated into the system or should not be integrated into the system. Whether or not you like capitalistic system or you think it's good as it is, or you think it needs to be changed. So I will argue mainly for the standpoint that psychedelics should not be integrated into the system because it will have negative outcomes that we kind of already see on the horizon. So my first point is the system needs to be changed first. Otherwise, the benefits that psychedelics could have is not really fully realized. Why is that? I think that people in the capitalistic system are living in a context that is not so beneficial for the psychedelic experience to have a positive outcome. For example, if you look to kind of beliefs underlying capitalism, for example, if I want to win, someone else has to lose. There's not enough for all people to become rich, or it's always about me, need to get better, faster, higher. So the kind of progress we always need to have. This is kind of opposing the potential that psychedelics, or also the experience that psychedelics bring with them. For example, to learning to let go and take a step back, becoming more aware, having this higher order thinking and reflection. So this might be a reason for psychedelics not to be integrated into this capitalistic system, at least not without changing it, right? Then the second argument is that we should not integrate it into the capitalistic system because people who need it in the capitalistic system might not have free access to it. This means that both people that have health conditions, as well as people who are quote unquote healthy, may benefit from it, but either the research that needs to be done in order to make this treatment available for patients is not done because it's not profitable enough, or healthy people cannot afford psychedelics. Then the third argument is that the system the capitalistic system would turn psychedelics and the psychedelic experience into something like a mainstream entertainment substance or mainstream entertainment experience, and the effect will be decreased. We all know, I think, the story of Brave New World, the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. There's something similar. He calls it soma. So people actually get some relief from the stress and the reality and can flee the reality. And this is, of course, something that we do not want, right? And if we take a look at how psychedelics are defined or explained, like the effects, for example, Stanislav Grof said that they are unspecific amplifiers. And if we take the capitalistic system as something that is there already and psychedelics would even amplify it, I think that's not a very good outcome. So, of course, we can also say consumerism is not the same as capitalism, but I still think that capitalism kind of supports consumerism in some way. And the ideology of making money, no matter how, is something that is, I think, resulting from capitalism. And then the last two arguments that I want to make is the fourth argument, because psychedelics should not be integrated into the healthcare system, because then this healthcare system, which is part of the capitalistic system, again, the healthcare system could also be structured otherwise, but it is indeed capitalistic in our system. And this would maybe lead to the fact that this healthcare system would then turn psychedelics into just another medicine to make money, and would benefit from people who are sick and not from people who are healthy and stay healthy. And the last argument is that if you again have this hidden premise that the system needs to be changed, the capitalistic system, there may be more efficient ways that you can direct your energy towards, for example, to try to directly change the system without going this kind of extra way of psychedelic integration, which also comes with a lot of risks. So why not changing the system directly? And this is my points that I want to make. And now I think I'm handing over to Andy. I'm really curious about your points.
Thank you, Patrick. Really well argued, especially under difficult conditions. So good work. Now we can hear Andy. He's going to argue the opposing view that psychedelics should be integrated into a capitalist system. Take it away, Andy.
Thank you. So I'm interested that you already mentioned the consumeristic side of capitalism, because it is indeed undeniably intertwined. Though I do feel the need to mention that often in the mind of people, it is almost synonymous. While the idea of capitalism inherently is to produce innovation and progress by the need of the people, that this is an incentive for innovation, and that there is a platform for things to grow. Because the idea of capitalism is you make something that people need, and you do that in a way that you make money with it, but this money goes back into your product so that it is able to grow and expand. And though definitely capitalism has its flaws, one of its great strengths is that if there is a large need, you will within a very short time have a very large platform. And I think that, well, in a way, this was a good example of that. Our world definitely needs some more connectedness and can use a platform that is transformational to people, or has the potential at least. Of course, it's a tool to be able to give a transformational experience to people. And if this need is large enough, you will be able to scale up this therapy and give access to a very large number of people, more so than in any other form of societal organization, where usually there are plans as to how something is constructed over a larger period of time, meaning a finite number of resources, a finite amount of financial support, which capitalism simply doesn't have. So that is my reply to that part of the statement. Another point is that to first try to change this system before we spread this to people will be withholding it from individuals that can benefit from it. And since we've been trying this for a long time and we do not currently have a better system, and still to be able to provide this service to individuals that need it most, there is simply no better alternative than to implement it now into capitalism. This is not the strongest argument, of course, but it is one that acknowledges the road to the least amount of human suffering. And as an added advantage, it might even be able to change the system and viewpoints of those in it, because it is coming from a more transformational point of view. Patrick already mentioned that it is a unspecific amplifier, so why would it have this effect? And I would argue that still you are doing it in a context that has its flaws, and by being open to them, to these flaws, by seeing these connections in a new light, I think the setting is such that it will have that effect on people, that it will make them more aware of all the parts of the system in which they are taking these substances. Another point I found interesting, we as the Mind Foundation, we talk often about how psychedelics are a tool. They are not unidirectional like the setting. It depends on where you take them, and it depends on the mindset with which you take them. At the same time, capitalism is like this. It is not inherently evil. It is not inherently bad. Depending on the intention of the people, of the companies that are giving these substances and this experience to people, you can do this with the right attitude. If you are working with a system of values and you found your capitalistic company on this set of values that has integrity and ethics as its main goal, you will not you can still make a profit while not having to sell people short, or not be able to hold the space for them in such a way that it is conducive to their well-being. And actually, I think the last point I want to make is saying it should not be integrated into this system because it will or could produce some evil situations. This will happen regardless of whatever system it is built into. There is no system which allows for the purely good application of these very powerful tools. There will be situations where it might be questionable which ethics are underlying the application of it, and thereby to have people that can truly benefit from it suffer by the lesser intentions of a subgroup. I don't think that is the morally superior way to go. Yeah, and I'll leave it with that.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So you guys have now heard two sides, two opposing views, kind of. Like I said at the beginning, the next step we want to take is basically separate you into groups. If I see correctly, we are 19 people. So there's probably, let's say, 3 groups of 5 and 1 group of 4. And then you can discuss in these small rooms. You're going to have a pop-up window that's going to ask you to join a room. You can just press yes. You're going to be in the room, discuss with these people that you're in. And then afterwards, one of you can share what you discussed, what kind of your conclusions were. So that's basically where you can put most of your thoughts on this topic. But for now, if you have any questions to Patrick or Andy, so like a short question, if there was one argument you didn't quite get, or a point you didn't quite understand but wanted to clarify for yourself, you now have the opportunity to ask some of these questions. And if these questions are answered, we're going to move on to the breakout rooms. So any short questions for Andy or Patrick? No?
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I raised my hand, but I'm not sure you're seeing this.
Yeah, no.
All right. So, no, it's actually not a very specific question to any of the speaker. I just wanted to make sure to have all the discussion points clear. So if Patrick and Andy can maybe note down in the chat their points, like very short summary, so that we can refer to them in the group discussion, if it's possible. Otherwise, I'll just go with that. Is that okay?
Sure. We can do that.
Yeah, we can do
Thanks. Thank you.
The two speakers will share kind of their main points for you to use, kind of starting off point. The main question to discuss for you guys is, should psychedelics be integrated into a capitalistic system, right? And then you can see what you think of that. Some of you already made points in the chat or started talking at the beginning, so that's great. Use that to discuss amongst yourself. And then afterwards, we get the opportunity to kind of collect your thoughts, and you can share what you figured out or haven't figured out. Cool. So there's a quick write-up from Andy in there. Just wait for Patrick's point, and then we can start the breakout rooms. You're going to organize the rooms, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear all your processes and whether you're going to have some minds changed.
Cool. So that's my main point. And basically, I said that it should not be integrated because it creates too many disadvantages. Like there's no balance between people, and people would suffer from it to a larger extent than people will benefit from it. There's too many risks involved, and we need to change the system first. And it's wiser to direct our energy towards changing the system first. Yeah.
Okay. Then you guys are going to move into the breakout rooms now. You're going to see a little pop-up window that's going to ask you to join a room, and you just press yes, and there's going to be 5 to 4 people in there from the group here that you can have a little discussion with. So it's going to take about like 20 minutes. That's kind of the limit we put ourselves. And then it's just going to automatically come back. You get a little warning. And
exactly. I may write a reminder 3 minutes before and then 1 minute before. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Then see you again in 20 minutes and have fun discussing.
So what are your guys' thoughts about each other's arguments?
I was not able to get them. I kind of rushed through it, but yeah, it's fascinating. I don't know if it's unwise to address or talk about what happened, but I think in the context of the discussion, it might actually be interesting to reflect upon it, right? It's like pretending it doesn't happen, I think, only empowers it or being awkward about it, but just to understand the I'm thinking about the motivations behind it, right? Like what are the emotions? Is it rage? Is it fear? Like I cannot imagine it in a way to, if you really pluck it apart, that these are in the end the motivations, and it's like just a sense of threat, right? That they are not able to face within themselves, so they completely put it on the outgroup or whatever. It's,
I mean, it's of course very speculative, but I could also well imagine that people who are really like strongly opposing capitalism and did not read through this whole event might think that we kind of argue for a capitalistic view in psychedelics, and then maybe fear or anger is maybe an emotion that they kind of use to troll us because we want to, I don't know, really give a bad view on psychedelics and capitalism somehow.
Okay, welcome back, Sergio. Yeah.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yeah.
But for sure, I think it's we can of course take some measures next time, but I think that it might be wise to not restrict it too harshly, because we still want to have these events for free, right? And we don't want to have it behind the paywall. There might be other ways for having limited access.
Of course, there are different ways to limit the events, and maybe just mute every one at the beginning of the event. We'll take the measures necessary without killing the open space that we are preparing here for the people that really are interested in discussing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's fascinating as well, right? That it has such a strong emotional reaction, don't you think? Like, I mean, we're all I feel like we all are thinking so into the future and the potential of humanity, and you get this confrontation with like these other perceptions of society, and it's like, oh, you know, it's yeah.
Do you mean it's kind of the fear of the unknown in a way, or
on their side or our side?
Well, I also have it, but maybe also on their side. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Or
I mean, I also pretty much argued from a basis that kind of has the fear of the unknown as an underlying premise, right? Because of course there will be risk, and there will also be a lot of suffering and harm when psychedelics are integrated into the system, but that does not necessarily mean that there's not also positive outcomes. And as you said, Andy, I think it was a very good point to say, well, there's always going to be risk, and if we want to change the system, we may grasp at various opportunities and possibilities, always keeping in mind that it could also have negative outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that we kind of don't really know either way how it's going to turn out. And now we kind of have to balance your risk perception as well, right? How much risk you perceive there to be, and the priorities you want to take, right? So it really kind of depends on the values you have and which way you're going to take, and kind of the risks you see as important. You probably agree on the risks there are and what could happen, and then you just got to judge what is more important to you, right? And what is less important.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so difficult, right? To decide what to do.
Yeah, totally. You could even argue that a lot of the underground therapies now being done is also is happening outside of a capitalist framework. Well, even in those circles, because it is happening in no framework, arguably, I mean, there's also a lot of sketchy stuff going on. So, yeah.
Maybe these contexts are even worse than a capitalistic but legal context. Yeah, you could also argue in this direction for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's always a lot of critique, of course, also on like for instance, information retention by the government, but at the same time, the instances that are actually seeking to get access to these kind of informations to prevent crime or whatever, they need to go through so many legal processes. And of course, because people don't have a clear grasp of this, it's very intimidating, and they just feel like it's all held by the government. Is actually that to access their own information is really not that easy. And if you put something like this in such a framework, there will also be so much regulation around it, which still needs to be created. And so it needs to be done in a secure way and very ethically and value oriented. But this would also need to happen in socialism or in any other kind of economical setup.
Yeah, I think it's really true. And we like what you mentioned about when you mentioned the illegal therapies, or the way psychedelic therapy is done now, which is mostly underground, which, as you said, right, there's very different risks that come with that, mostly kind of safety, and in many cases, even that is basically still a capitalist thing, because you have to pay for it in most cases as well, right? And sometimes really a lot as well. And I think, but there's the advantage that basically everybody can get it, kind of. And one of the arguments against the integration into the current system is basically that maybe some people won't have the access to it because it's basically going to be available for middle class people, right? That's kind of the idea. So again, that's what I said, right, about balancing what risks do you want to have and what kind of advantages do you want to have? You want to have it to be available and very safe, right? If it's integrated into the system and you have a regulatory system, as you mentioned, Andy, you kind of make rules on how to do that, which is great. But then maybe not everyone gets access, or do you want everyone to get access, but in a very unsafe manner, maybe? Right? And best way obviously would be to combine it. Everybody can do it in safe ways. That's the dream. That's what we're working for, I think. So the question is how to do that in the best way. So, do you guys have any ideas or thoughts on how to do it? Like not if you would do it with capitalism or with another system, but if you could kind of design a system in which you wanted psychedelics to be available, what it would be.
Yeah, actually, I want to say one more thing before answering it, because I think, Andy, also you, although you said that it's not the best argument, but you said something like, okay, since we're now having a capitalistic system and we think that psychedelics are really a useful tool, we can only integrate it into this system, right? And a discussion about which system we want to live in is another discussion. But for now, the psychedelic integration may be fastest and also relieve a lot of suffering when it's integrated as soon, but also as safe as possible. And to add some thoughts on what to do in order to integrate it in a safe way, I think that always the best or one of the most important things is education when it comes to substances from a prevention perspective, that people really know what these substances are, what their effects are, and also know themselves before taking psychedelics. And I think this goes both for patients, like the clinical setting, as well as a more personal experimental setting. So I think that, of course, you can also have like regulations that are more in the outer system, right? So for example, restrictions for people under the year of 20, 21 or whatever. But I think that the education is the main part. And you could also see by the level of education how well some substance or anything is integrated, right? Because if there's no education at all, it's not integrated, in my opinion. Since education is a very crucial part.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, then there's a question of how this education should look like, and what very important points that also are kind of actionable for people could be, because I think it's very important to know all the pharmacology, or at least some part of pharmacology, but then when it comes to the subjective effect, you may not, the pharmacology background is maybe not so useful in order to cope with a certain emotion or cope with certain states of consciousness. Or what do you think?
Agree. Yeah, definitely. And I think something you touched on as well just now, which we didn't even discuss yet, which I think is really important, kind of when for now we just said psychedelics in general integrate into the system, but there's very different uses, right? I mean, I think for most people it's assumed that we're talking about the medical use, which is basically the big thing that everybody is doing now. We're talking about, but you also mentioned kind of the personal exploration or whatever. So there's different ways and kind of to use the psychedelics, and therefore different ways that we should regulate it, right? There's the medical use needs to be regulated, but the personal use also needs to be regulated in some way, right? And so we didn't even get into the specific ways in which each use should be or needs to be regulated as well, right? And for example, like you said, for some parts, education might be some education might be more important than for other parts. Right? For the medical use, it might be more important to know about the personal stuff that might come up, and for if there's a way to do it outside of a medical center, it might be more important to know about drug interactions, right? What not to do while you're on a psychedelic, because you're out in the world and whatever you're going to do. So it really needs a comprehensive and big system. And so I think one really good idea about this online discussion is to think about how we want this big integration to happen. So I think there's a lot of models for the medical integration, as we are working on it as well. But I feel like there's a bit missing to get to the comprehensive integration and getting really well-situated culture around it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as to your question, as how do we see it and how could it actually work? Usually in the current psychotherapy paradigms, the sessions are relatively short, but thankfully by the maybe legislative nature of the system that we live in, while you are under the influence of this substance, you are actually not allowed to leave somebody alone. So thereby you already, purely due to the pharmacological effect, you extend the duration of any therapeutic session so much that that in itself is already a transformational effect in itself. Yeah. Though at the same time, that would be my biggest fear if it would get squished and the time is not taken for a person to maximize profit. I think that's the biggest risk that everybody is afraid of in the psychedelic community, because that could be harmful, of course, because sometimes people have an internal process that is not so apparent on the outside, and you simply need to give the person the space and the time to be able to let that come up in the process of integration. Yeah.
I think it's also one of the main points, right, made in the, we will call it Taylor, the webcomic, that we figured out, right, that the kind of the valuable therapy that is being done now in these trials, which is very extensive with preparation and sessions afterwards, right? There's way more psychotherapy going on than actual psychedelic use. So, and if you boil that down really to just the psychedelic, we're going to sell the psychedelic, that's definitely something to be worried about. So I think that's a really great point. Good that you bring it up. That's also, I think, one of the main worries I would have, that you kind of separate the substance from the therapy itself and make it a commodity. Yeah. But then on the other hand, like we discussed last times, I'm a proponent of like bigger drug legalization and, let's say, a different kind of general drug regulation, where as a private person, you would have access to psychedelics as well, right? And then the question, on one hand, we are saying, or I'm saying, that it should be always accompanied by preparation sessions and psychotherapy. But on the other hand, if we want to have a legalized supply of psychedelics for people, as the truffles, for example, in the Netherlands right now, that kind of really goes against that, because people are just going to do it at home or on the streets or wherever, right? And I think kind of combining these two viewpoints is very difficult, at least for me. Like, I kind of want both to happen at the same time, but I don't know how. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then we kind of get back to the education point, what Patrick was saying, like the knowledge and also the practical skills to be able to go or be in such a psychological state, which is, you just need reflective properties, right? But sorry, Patrick, did you want to say something as well?
I was just about to, but yeah, I think we can really draw like the best things from both levels of integration, right? That we also have the more outward directed regulative part. But I personally think, I don't know what your opinion is, I think that the education part, like the more to the subject oriented way of prevention and regulation, is more useful. So although I don't think it should be like absolutistic somehow, but if a person, for example, if you take an example and take the sugar industry, for example, which is not regulated at all, right? So we have all kinds of sugar in the supermarket and people are buying it. Of course, you could regulate all the sugar products, or the stuff, or put some signs on there saying it's dangerous or it's unhealthy. But I think that once you came to the conclusion that it's really unhealthy and it doesn't serve your body or your mind well, it doesn't mean that you like quit eating sugar for the rest of your life, but just integrate it into a very actionable way. Then it wouldn't make a difference anymore if there's science or anything else, right? Because this kind of reflection is guiding your action. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, the education is not going to stop people from doing, let's say, less than optimal ways of taking psychedelics, right? Like I really like the example of the sugar, because I think that it's not that people don't know that sugar is bad, right? It's very commonly known, and basically very few people use that information in the way that you would think. So education might not be as successful and actually making stuff safe as it could be. But on the other hand, I always have this very this freedom defending voice always says, well, let people do whatever they want. So it's a kind of hard divide, right, between how much safety do you want to provide and how much regulation you want to provide and how much freedom do we want to give. Because in the end, I also feel like people are free to do with their minds and their bodies as they like. Right. So as we have with sugar.
Sure.
Right. Sure. But there's still some level, probably more. I probably would like to see more regulation on psychedelics and sugary products. That would be, I think we are agreeing on that.
It's funny actually. What comes up for me is like social norms, right? Like the way with how humans interact with a lot of things in the world is very, very largely based on the social norms that are around it. Just imagining a world where this reflective property, like, oh, you're taking psychedelics for fun, like, oh, dude, like you should, like, aren't you like reflecting? Like, where's your integration? So,
yeah. Hi, Jelena. We're still discussing amongst ourselves. You're free to listen in. The others are going to be coming back in 30 seconds as well. Then we're going to have the group discussion and so on. Yeah, but I think that's a really good point you made, Andy, about the kind of the norms and the way the society integrates and enculturates substances, right?
Exactly.
So, because we have culture for other substances in Germany, there's drinking culture and there's cigarette culture, and it kind of takes away a lot of need for regulation. And if you would have a proper culture around it, like you mentioned, where you think it's weird to take psychedelics outside of a therapeutic setting, like what would actually go a long ways, I would think. So,
folks, can I? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure. Come on in.
I just have to leave. So we ended the separate meeting, and I think someone will report. I just wanted to thank you all, especially for how you dealt with the situation before. It was really smooth. Nobody panicked. So well done, guys. I have to disconnect now, but can I see the live recording afterwards on Facebook as well? Is that possible?
On Facebook and on YouTube, so you can check it out.
Perfect. And will you be able to share a transcript of the chats as well?
I'll save one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Just
to the attendant. That would
you can also do it yourself.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks very much, guys. All right, how do I do it?
You press chat and then the dot and then.
Okay, I'm on my phone, so
we'll share it with you. Let's see. We'll share it with you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for joining.
It says view full transcript, but there's no transcript here, so maybe.
Okay. All right.
I'll just wait for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Inventory. We had 4 different groups, I believe, right? Yeah. Or actually, Lukas. Yeah.
Trick. Did we have 4 groups?
Yeah, we had 4 groups.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, welcome back. I hope you had a good discussion amongst yourselves. What I want to do now is kind of let you guys share what you discussed. And we saw the last time what we did was, and we think is the easiest way, that one person from each group kind of reports on what you did and what you talked about. So if anyone wants to start talking about their group, what you talked about, what your process was, kind of the thoughts that went through your minds.
And of course, other people can then add to this, right?
Course, yeah.
So there's no monologue or presentation like in school required.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bas, do you want to start?
Well, I think actually Barney could do it better.
Yeah, I'm happy to just to introduce myself to everyone.
Cool.
I mean, don't hate me when I say this, but I'm actually a venture capitalist in the psychedelic space. So, you know, my opinion may or may not be biased. I'm also from the UK, from London, where we have the wonderful NHS system, which again puts a bias on me, mainly because, you know, we have the access to healthcare, which is, you know, we're very fortunate as a country. And so, you know, I was discussing with our breakout group just access to capital and how important that is to progress research. And you know, I alluded to early on that MAPS have done a fantastic job, but you know, it's taken such a significant amount of time, and they're still not an approved drug through for MDMA. And you know, it's really highlighted the potential of all psychedelics, and there's so many different interactions where, you know, there is a huge possibility for success with these medications. And it's a case of, look, how do we do it ethically, but in a capitalist way, just so we have access to that early capital to grow these startup businesses. I've been there. I've been, you know, a founder of a startup, and it's a very difficult process when there's such demands on the monetization and, you know, trying to get access to funds. But again, my bias of being at with the NHS and being a venture capitalist, I feel that they're very powerful. So, you know, I'd much rather be in a position where I can listen to some of your views, and I'm going to swiftly pass the baton on to someone else, if you don't mind.
Well, thank you, Barney, for sharing and to being open about your capitalist orientation.
Which is, of course, welcome. Yeah. So we want to find out the best way how to integrate it and not like do some propaganda for or against capitalism. Yeah.
Okay, well, just one additional point that we had in our group discussion was, you know, we spoke about maybe having milestones where, you know, almost as a sector, you have, you know, organizations like yourselves, like Psychedelic Medicine Association, who I'm good friends with. You're doing very similar things and trying to be the voice of the industry. You know, we should set milestones of, you know, ideals, where we'd like to be, patient access, whatever else, and try and hold some accountability to these companies that are being set up. You know, get them to make ethical pledges. You've seen Compass, you've seen Atai, who have pledged to donate year on year to MAPS and whatever else. You know, maybe as a single body, there could be a place for, you know, to set these milestones and really hold these companies accountable. And that was one area that, you know, really stuck out to me in our little breakouts. So yeah, I'll let you guys continue from now.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Really interesting discussions. Any other groups that want to share kind of what they talk? Maybe someone which group had a very different view?
Yeah, I can present.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we were a group of 4. Unfortunately, we had one person with a muted mic, so she was only able to contribute through chat, but that's okay. So we started our discussion with like a story.
Oh, you're muted, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
We started with a story, we call it Pala, which is like a dystopian view of psychedelic legalization, and then quickly started to discuss about what is a capitalist system and what is the system that we are living in, and we came to the conclusion that everything is quite complicated, and depending on your definition of capitalist or a capitalist society. And so we had this from like discussion with, when we have a lot of opportunity, this would be great. It would be nice to have like cheap healthcare, which are all capitalist values. And then we had the discussion that capitalist system is like exploitation of resources, which is then like totally against the psychedelic experience in and of itself. And we didn't really come to a solution for this, to be honest, like not at all. And we started talking about how is it then that we are here, and try to change something about it, and discussed about, are psychedelics a fringe issue for society? Is it a good way to change the system? Or are psychedelic substances already in the mainstream, like it was in the beginning, or like we discussed at the beginning? And we didn't really find another solution for this question as well. It's like we belong all to a fringe group, I guess, but we're starting to make it into a mainstream. I mean, we're getting Zoom bombed now. This is awesome, I guess. So yeah, we shared a lot of points, no real solution whatsoever, but we are already in a capitalist system, and every one of us is here. So it kind of is already integrated in a system and into the capitalist system. So it's here, why not do something with it?
Yeah, thank you. I think that kind of is also a point you made, Andy, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, we're here now. We're already moving, so I think there's no point to stop now and reflect. Wait, where are we moving in?
Yeah, cool. So we have two more groups. Anybody from these groups wants to share kind of what you went through, what you discussed?
I can.
Yeah.
Nobody else from my group wants to talk. I mean, some of the things that have been said, we discussed similar things. I guess we all converged on the idea that we cannot afford to wait, and we will have to, kind of for pragmatic reasons, we have to introduce it within a capitalistic system, but that we should in parallel try to improve capitalism. Alessio, our colleague, was more determined to abolish capitalism completely, I guess, but then different people had different degrees of willingness to do that. But yeah, like I said, what I believe is that we cannot afford. We have to do things in parallel. Abolishing capitalism, I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. So we should do things in parallel, and it's more of a matter of how much gas do we want on each of these projects. I think society is reactive, and if we introduce psychedelics, we're going to introduce some problems, and then we'll have to deal with them. I think it's impossible to try to prevent any bad things from happening by making a perfect system and then introducing psychedelics into it.
Yeah. Okay. So similar points that we heard, right? That we kind of are already here, and then we have to kind of work with what we have, which is the capitalistic system. And we can't afford to wait, which is also, I think, a point Andy made in this part, right? That it's probably the best way to get the medicine to most people, which, yeah, I think a lot of people share this view. So thank you as well. We had a last group. I think we have 4 groups. Anybody from the last group want to chime in?
Which
Patrick. Cool.
My group members already raised their voice. In that case, please don't. But as far as I noticed, not. We had quite a diverse set of ideas we were going through. Starting from, we would have to wait until capitalism basically deteriorates itself, until capitalism is not a problem anymore. So that as well quickly leads to, so what to do now with psychedelics? Now we have them, and we know that they have some value. We haven't yet found out which concrete values and applications. We had as well the point that you will hardly ever be able to replicate Peru experiences in, let's say, Denmark. It's not going to be the same. It was as well never the same when we took things from a culture into another culture and we played it back. It usually like had to be adapted to the culture. Now, is this going to by necessity lead to a more aware state of people in capitalism? As a group had diverse ideas. My own take as a summary of that is that we can't possibly know. Like, it will have this effect in some people, it will have this effect not in some other people, because we know this from history, but we like to predict where this is going. And the psychedelics will have some innate directionality against capitalism, I find hard to conceive until now. And that was roughly as well the echo of the group, that like it's not necessarily that it's not already being done. You have them either underground and overground or behind the ground, but like you have them still in the same thing, right? And this already exists since roughly 200 years in its like cycling iterations. And that means even like the stuff that we find out 70, 80 years ago, Albert Hoffman, that's invented in capitalism. Like this is born in there. So now finding a good application for it was tried. It did fail for various reasons. Now we're trying again. Now maybe we can be smart about it this time and like see how much good we can actually get while avoiding learning from mistakes. Like the US hippie era, for example, was a good example of in which combination of factors that wouldn't work, and it didn't work. Now that's maybe not status quo right now, and maybe we don't have to try again like that. What now the opposite of that, or like a functionally integrated system approach to psychedelics nowadays would look like, I did not hear any one of my group members nor me say that they have that figured out, because that would be amazing, but then I wouldn't probably be here. I would write the book about it.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I think that's also echoes what Neil said about the group process, and what we actually also, the three of us, had while you were in our breakout rooms in our own little breakout room, which is basically we don't have the solutions, right? We're only trying to think together with the community, with you people, what are the options even, right? Because like you said, Patrick, if we had the solution and we had a good idea about what to do, we probably would be out there doing that instead of talking about how to do it. Yeah, thank you. Really good points. Really like the ideas you guys have. One question that came up for me now listening to all of you, I feel like the majority of you mentioned that we all already are in the capitalist system, and Patrick mentioned LSD was born in a capitalist system. And so let's kind of roll with it and see how we can continue or maybe improve. But for some way, it seems to me that most of you agree that it should be, psychedelics should be integrated into the system. And as Barney mentioned, for example, should be done in an ethical way. So my question to you, like all of you, feel free to chime in there, is do you think that investment into a capitalistic system is possible in an ethical way? Because there are arguments to be made. I definitely know people who would argue that it is not possible at all. So there's not no way to do it. That's why we shouldn't do it. But I feel like the vibe that's kind of coming to me here is that there's definitely the opportunity for that. So also Patrick and Andy, feel free to give your thoughts. Do you guys think there's a way to be an ethical capitalist psychedelic company? Can we actually do that, as Barney suggested at the beginning? What are your thoughts?
That's a rough question, man.
It is a hard question, but it's an important one. And speaking from the VC side of my kind of professional career, it is possible, and more often than not, we're witnessing a lot of VC funds that are popping up all over the place who are solely focused on impact investing. This is now becoming a huge area for, you know, high net worth individuals, family offices, or whatever else, they are starting to, you know, feel the weight of the world, and they are now, you know, having a proportion of their net worth going into impact investing. And I certainly feel that, you know, the psychedelic movement and you know, an ethical approach to giving access to these medicines comes under impact investing. Like, why does it not? You know, mental health is one of the biggest issues facing our times, well, since Corona started a couple of months ago, and it's very important that these groups, the stuff that you guys are creating here, needs to get out. And believe me, there is access to capital in an ethical way. Like, you can only just look at what Tim Ferriss has been doing, you know, putting a donation challenge to MAPS of, you know, £10 million. That's game changing. You know, there are lots more people like him, and there are lots more VC funds doing just that.
Cool. Thank you for your insights. That's definitely cool to have someone here who kind of knows the business as well. I think, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Kendraze, I think you raised your hand as well. Want to participate?
Yeah, I wanted to try to say something also, because I had kind of a bit different point of view and thoughts in the group conversation, and also for this capitalism thing.
Yeah.
First, because I think that I understood the point of view of Patrick of this, how to say, like, how first capitalism needs to be changed as a system, and then to try to integrate it. But even though it's, for me, it's kind of hard utopic idea, like how it can be changed, but I wish it could be changed. But I know that, for example, the healthcare system, it's quite different in different places. And when it is much more capitalist system, for example, let's say, I don't know, US and Slovenia when I'm living, so it's kind of different. So where you are able to access like free healthcare, but I'm not from European Union, and also like I know like how it is, like sometimes the healthcare is like not the human right, but it's like citizen right. So it's like it will raise like many questions, and then being integrated in capitalism system, like I really like this point of view of the other Patrick that talked from this last group that said that how one experienced something I don't know, in Peru or something, like if you go, it's totally different than, I don't know, in Denmark, something. Or I was just thinking in general, so how yoga just became quite popular last like 10 years. And in a way, I don't know, one of these terrible examples is like, for example, I've heard that here from one friend that is photographer, that he had to photograph a yoga teacher that it's quite famous, and it's giving classes to people that work in the bank, so they kind of are better workers so every morning. So I don't know then how this is used for something else, just to continue this production, or just I don't know. And then how it's just these things and all the props, and how it became something of millions. And if you study yoga, and if you are more like involved into it, you should not think for profiting, and it's more like you do like karma yoga, but then a lot of people that are involved in it are just kind of also making money out of it, and just not thinking about all these other things and how it changed. Just like, I don't know, I was just kind of thinking about all this. So I don't know, I wish, and I know that they are kind of here like integrated in capitalist system, and capitalist system it's everywhere, but not like in all levels, how to say, not in the same level, but it's all everywhere. But I think that's some kind of more like with the socialist values, kind of with this kind of way that it was education and healthcare, with this kind of point of view, if the society would have the healthcare in this kind of way, when everyone would have free access or something, and it would not be treated as for profit, that would be like better way of, not just for psychedelics but for all the medicine. But this is kind of hard to be done, I think, in general in the world. So
yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good point, right? That, as Patrick has mentioned before, that it's different systems need different ways of applying that, right? It's a different matter to integrate psychedelics into the German healthcare system than the healthcare system in the US or in Denmark or in Peru or in China, right? So completely different ways of doing that. But I really like the point you made when you talked about yoga, actually, about people, teaching people yoga at the bank to be more proficient, or we know that a lot of that is done for meditation as well, right? There's every big company now has meditation teachers to let the employees be more productive. And that's kind of another side that we didn't touch upon yet, kind of the way psychedelics can be integrated into the very over-the-top capitalistic system. What we see, for example, with the Silicon Valley and people taking psychedelics to produce more capital and to produce more productive in their work and to kind of just continue doing what they are doing, which we didn't touch upon yet because I think we mostly talked about the medical aspect and how to integrate it medically, which is also what Barney mentioned, which is basically the main point that we're arguing for. But good to not forget kind of that there's another level to it, right? If you have psychedelic entrepreneurs going around companies saying, well, if your employees take LSD with me, then they'll be working way much better and better to exploit. Yeah, Bas.
I just want.
Sorry.
Oh, I think Bas is next. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are some in the field of psychedelics. It's a very complex field. It's very interdisciplinary. The knowledge that is required to give good psychedelic therapy is you need a lot of knowledge for that. So for this reason, the scientists are important stakeholders, and the people who are involved in this movement for a long time. And I think they generally are all very ethically minded and very so they really want to make something beautiful out of it and not make money per se. So I think these individuals and organizations like MAPS actually have a lot of power in this, and you also have the Burning Man crowd, who are also generally quite socially oriented and progressive. So I think there are, if these players in this field realize their power and they don't let the corporations take advantage of them, then there's a good chance that there will come an very ethical system will come out of this, I think.
Thank you. Okay.
Maybe adding to your thoughts, Lukas, and also to your question whether we can at all ethically implement psychedelics into a capitalistic system. I think we definitely can, and I think the other way or the other attitude saying we can't do anything about it, right? So this is kind of the victim who is not willing to do anything because the system is false and the system is to blame. I think it's not really constructive, and maybe a way that is an idea. I'm curious about your thoughts about how to integrate psychedelics then, since we're maybe all are aware that there's some risk or dangers that also capitalism brings with it. It's maybe useful to integrate psychedelics not only as, okay, here's the psychedelic substances, you may want to use it, you may not want to use it, but as the philosopher Thomas Metzinger often said, that the integration of psychedelic experiences and substances is actually only a small step in a bigger project, which he calls Bewusstseinskultur or culture of consciousness, but there's also other names. And I think he also mentioned that it's a culture of educating each other and of raising awareness of keeping raising the awareness and educating each other. And of course, this education could also look like political sciences and political philosophy, making people aware that, hey, we are living in a capitalistic society, and there's advantages to it, opportunities to it. There's also risks to it. Then you could speak about ethics in general, for example, and this could maybe be a way of ethical integration. What do you think? I'm just curious.
I'll give my 2 cents, definitely. I think that's a really good point. I think that's also what we discussed in our 3-way breakout room, right? Andy, Patrick, and me, that we need a bigger culture kind of as well. Like, it's not enough to just integrate psychedelics and then leave it at that and be like, okay, now psychedelics are here and we are done, basically. But a bigger cultural change needs to be happening as well. I think it also kind of goes into what Barney mentioned, this new forms kind of using capital and new ways of investing to kind of change not only like this one little bit where we have everything we always had, and now there's also psychedelics, but kind of going for a bigger cultural change and maybe establishing the culture of consciousness from Metzinger or other different political changes that we want to see or bigger changes. Yeah, so I think it's a really, really good point. Other ideas, other people.
Yeah,
I think KG.
Oh, sorry.
I think KG raised the hand.
Yes, thank you. I don't know. I think it's Einstein who said, like, it's crazy if you try to make the same stuff again and again, and even if you know that it doesn't work. And I have the impression that it is again a situation like this. History has showed us for 200 of years that integrating a product into the capitalistic systems leads to always the same thing: capitalist accumulation. All right, the product gets the production cost gets reduced, and the rendite, the profit, goes to the capitalist. Right, the goal is capital accumulation, and it is not helping people. All right, this is the first point. The second point is that nowadays we have a new kind of capitalist, is the ethical capitalist, who is really trying to change the world by bringing the money that we desperately need. I totally disagree. I think that we can create something new. I'm not an expert. I'm a sociologist. Okay, I don't know a lot about money and moving money from there to here. But the thing is that maybe we can create something where people mutually engage with smaller sums, right, to invest in something that is going to create something better. I don't believe that the only way of getting capital is to go to big, already venture capitalists that are only looking for a percentage on their sheet at the end of the month. I think that is the spirit that we should have, because I don't know much about psychedelics, but I understood it like this, that there were some cultures that discovered that they can access something that is above the material world, right? Something that they can't grasp. It would be like a big contradiction to integrate something that where the spirit was to go into spiritualism into something that is totally materialistic, which is the capitalist system. That is my point of view.
Yeah, cool. Thank you also for bringing a bit of a different perspective in here as well. Patrick, you want to say something? Yeah.
A perspective I largely would say is as well coherent with how I view capitalism. Like, it is a system which is in place since quite a long time, and history largely actually agrees with your stance. Now, the question that we are trying to riddle out right now, if I understand it correctly, is less if capitalism is good in transforming a good into profitable good and then making profit on it. That is what capitalism is most likely very good at. The question is there a way, while we are not getting rid of the superstructure right now, to work on a smaller problem, say, like access to psychedelics for people who could potentially need them. Now, I don't really see how logically this is running against each other directly. So I don't necessarily believe that the drug, which has been anti-establishment in 1968, a lot of things were anti-establishment in that moment in space-time. Like, there was a lot of good reasons to not like your state, neither the governance. like that was likely just accelerated by psychedelics. So can it be done in this capitalistic system that we are running right now? It seems that it can be done. It actually is being done right now. Like the research we are doing across the globe is living proof that you can. Now, the questions we are not knowing is what happens with the people in 10, 20, and 30 years after they've taken a psychedelic in this system. What we don't know either is are psychedelics just going to make it more efficient to like exploit you as a worker? Because, you know, once you are mentally disordered or in any other way, shape, or form mentally limited, say psychedelics can help you, great, you do psychedelic therapy, and then you get back into the system. So you're basically being reintegrated into something which made you sick. These are two different questions, though they intertwine and like interrelate in exactly that triad. And it's something that I'm looking at since 10 years. I have no good answer for that. And every single time I try to conceptualize it, I get more questions, seldomly more, you know, that's how we're going to do it. I have like heard a lot of people say that across time who had the master plan, like the thing which is going to like structurally defeat capitalism, structurally defeat like the non-access to psychoactives in general. Like you could as well argue that like it's a human right that you can mess with your brain, and that has been tried, and in this system it fails. The cognitive freedom and liberty claim of, I think, one clandestine chemist as a defense in Britain, that didn't really work. And as much as we might, some of us might like the idea, in the light of the rest of the globe still has too much interest in capitalism, I don't really see how avoiding capitalism or like running it parallel in kind of a sacred schema, it's not going to live in a vacuum ever.
If I can add to that, maybe I was reading a quote preparing for this from a psychedelic therapist, and he likened himself to a medical, to a military doctor who said it's like having to patch somebody up on the battlefield and then seeing him run at this battlefield again to be harmed again. And I really liked that analogy. Yeah, so I do feel the need. I'm loving the flow of the conversation, but it is almost 9.
More hand raise.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe Angela, because you had something to say, you can say that. In the meantime, I think Lukas has the link prepared. I don't know if people are already a member of the Mind Foundation, but if you like what we're doing and you want to keep up with what we are doing, then he will put the link in the chat. And I just already wanted to have mentioned that. Yeah, please, Angela.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you for organizing this discussion and finding it like really interesting with very different opinions, which makes it even like more enriching, I think. I especially agree with the things that Lukas, KJ, and the woman who talked before, Kendresi. Sorry, I'm probably saying your name in the wrong way. Sorry, but I really agree with the things that were said. I'm a bit of in the same position. I don't trust the capitalist system to integrate psychedelics because I don't think that they will do it for the best, to achieve the best for people, but to achieve the most profit that they can. But then for me, it's like a hard question to answer because of the same things that other people have said. That yeah, but what we do in the meantime, you know, before until we destroy the capitalist systems, or it like gets like self-destructed. And for me to be able to reply to that answer, and it's something that I raised in the discussion group as well, is that it's different to talk about integration than to talk about legalization. I do think that we have psychedelics already here in the capitalist system, but they appear in the underground. It's an illegal thing to do. And for me, it's easier to reply the question of legalization because I do think that they should be legalized. But I think that when and one of the main arguments to legalize it is like the fact that it's really helpful. Like for example, about assisted therapy with MDMA, I do think that it helps and it can do a lot of good. And for that to be done, it could be necessary to be integrated in the capitalist system. But at the same time, I like quite aware that it could be integrated in certain way. That we cannot be as naive of thinking that just because of legalizing and making them more available in the capitalist system, everything is going to be as we wish it could. Because what it could be approved, it could be certain experience, a commodified experience of taking psychedelics, and it could be an experience more linked to us as consumers than anything more spiritual or whatever we want to call it. I see it as being definitely less radical than taking psychedelics in the raves in the 80s in the United Kingdom against Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
That couldn't be the kind of psychedelics that could be taking. It's
I think we have to kind of interrupt. Our time is kind of up, so I have to kind of stop you in the middle of the tracks, unfortunately.
But I like the thoughts also as some final thoughts actually, because I think it's really nice that Angela, you summed up that we should not be naive about the integration. It's probably will be challenging, and we shouldn't expect that it will solve our problems. It will probably be just the start of some bigger change, hopefully positive change.
Yeah, thank you. So nice closing up. Again, thank you everybody who participated, especially in light of our rough start. Again, sorry for that. We'll try to make it up next time and start with a safer, still free online discussion. So just follow us on Facebook, Twitter, become a member, and then you will see all the new events that we're going to do the free discussions on a regular basis. So there's going to be more of that. I hope to see some of you again soon in our next discussion. Again, thank you very much for your input. Have a great evening and goodbye. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your input. It was great.
Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great evening.